All right. Okay. All right. Okay. The date, December 5th, 1926. The time, well, I guarantee you it wasn't Monday Night Football. I can tell you that much. However, let me, as the New York Times puts it here, hold on here. Let's click in on this here. The time, football at the Polo Grounds today at 2:15 p.m. New York Giants versus the Chicago Bears. This game will decide the National League title. Well, the seats, if you're still interested and you want to go to this game, seats are only $1, right? Unlike the $420 that they are today. So if you're interested, head on down to the Polo Grounds and you can pick up your seats for $1. Bring a jacket and a snow shovel because you're going to need it. Anyway, as I said, is supposed to have decided the championship, but they were partly right. It was supposed to have, but the game never happened. The teams, the Chicago Bears, New York Giants, the place, the Polo Grounds. Once again, as I say, it didn't happen. This would be the basically for the Giants. Okay, this would be their last scheduled game of the season. All right, they came into this game 8-4-1. This was supposed to be their 14th game of the season. Once again, they did not play it. The year before, they only wound up playing 12 games. This year, they played because this one got canceled. They played 13 games. Interestingly, now I don't know what happened, but the teams were responsible for making their own schedules, right? There was no NFL, office, and they figure out all the schedule out for you. And when actually the NFL schedule is due to be out. Excuse me. We know who the Giants are playing. We just don't know where and all that stuff. But the NFL office, they figure out and they here you go. Here's your schedule. Well, it didn't happen back then. You got to work out your own schedule. But in 1925, the Giants would play their final 2 games of the season, would be a home and home with the Bears. December 6th, 1925, the Bears came to the Polo Grounds, pretty much like they're doing here. It was this December 5th, 1926. So it was the first Sunday, okay, in December. In 25 and in 26, the Bears came to the Polo Grounds. In 1925, excuse me, I do apologize. 1925, the following week, December 13th, the Giants went to, it was called Cubs Park, I believe, back then. It wasn't called Wrigley Field yet. It was still Cubs Park. But the following week, I said in 1925, December 13th, 1925, the Giants went to Cubs Park to play the Bears. 1925, December 6th, the Bears would, in 1925, the Bears would win 19-7 at the Polo Grounds. The Giants, the following week, would return the favor to the Bears, beating the Bears 9-0. This year, 1926, once again, I do apologize. The Bears, came to the Polo Grounds on December 5th, 1926. This was the final game for the season for the Giants. I said once again, well, the Giants would play one more game, but that was against the champion of the AFL League, the Philadelphia Quakers. So the Giants would play one more game, but it wasn't an NFL game. Right? Didn't count in the standings. The Bears would go on to play 2 more games after this one. I got to pop it up here. Okay. The Bears wound up playing 16 games. This would have been the 17th game that they were supposed to have played. Once again, it didn't get played. But after this game here, the following Sunday, December 12th, the Bears would play the Pottsville Maroons. And then the following week on December 19th, that's pretty, back then, it played till December 19th. It was pretty late in the season. But anyway, the following Sunday on December 19th, 1926, the Bears played the Green Bay Packers to a 3-3 tie. Okay. I'll just go over the I did this last season as well. Well, not last season, but when I went over the when the Bears came to town, and I was doing my video because I got a video out for all that whole 1925 season. Pretty much is almost the end of the 1926 season. I said, I'll have one more video for the 1926 season. Right. I said it will be the Giants when the Giants played the Philadelphia Quakers. So I'll have one more game in for the 1926 season. And then we'll start on the 1927 season, which just happened to be the Giants' first championship season. They went 11-1-1. And not only 11-1-1, they played 13 games. But in those 13 games, they gave up 20 points, 1.5 points per game. Eat your heart out, Lawrence Taylor. Some good defense. But of course, as the Giants had done, like in '86, they won the Super Bowl. '87, they had a losing record. 1990, they won the Super Bowl. 1991, they didn't make the playoffs. Right? So as they've done in the past. So 1927, the Giants won the championship, 11-1-1, and of course in 1928, the Giants had their first losing season. So, but let me just go over the Bears because it's kind of interesting the way the way this stuff is back then. The Bears were around. They were a founding member of the National Football League, but in 1920 it was called 1920 and 1921 it was called the American Professional Football Association. So the Bears were a founding member in 1920, but they were not called that. The first 3 years they were called something different. They were called the Decatur Staleys, 1920. They were called 1921. They were called the Chicago Staleys. In 1922 they were called, and they still are called, the Chicago Bears. So the founder, we're very lucky that the Bears are still around and all. We're very, very lucky, right? But the founding, the guy who, Mr. Staley, had, very smart, very, very smart. He was a great businessman, but he saw the bigger picture. He envisioned the bigger picture. And basically, as it's saying in this article here, I'm going to read, he made George Halas an offer he could not refuse. So let me share my screen here, and we'll go over this article here. All right. Decatur Staley's football team founded in 1919. In 1919, A.E. Staley was gearing up for what would be his most prolific decade. This decade from 1920 to 30 would begin with the creation of the Staley Athletic Program and the beginning of the Decatur Staley's Football Club. Why would an industrialist like Staley would embark in the field of athletics? Dan Forrestal, author of The Colonel and the Bean. The 75-year history of Staley Manufacturing Company suggests several possible reasons. First, he offers that Staley, having come from humble beginnings and having had very little formal schooling, missed out on the opportunity to participate either actively or as an observer in any kind of athletic program, although his competitive nature indicates that he would have enjoyed sports. Another possible reason for embarking on an athletic program is the inherent lessons to be learned regarding sportsmanship. Staley surely must have thought that employees participating in sports either actively or as spectators would grow to value the lessons learned of being a team player, which is true. Which is true. Good sportsmanship, character building, as well as building a sense of team factory loyalty. Staley also might have regarded this as a good, healthy entertainment for his employees who otherwise spent their days working in a town focused basically on industry. But maybe more than any other reason is that the fact that A.E. Staley was an entrepreneur with big dreams. He wanted to see the Staley name and product line succeed, right? What better way to promote the Staley name than by an organized traveling sports team? It is probably safe to say that all of these factors came into play in motivating Staley to begin a company-supported athletic program. All right. So the football team went pro. In the summer of 1920, George Halas went out. Hold on. Here we go. I just want to try to, I don't want to read everything here. I'll be here for an hour and a half. But the Decatur Staley team goes to Chicago. This is very, very important. Hey, once again, A.E. Staley saw the big picture, and we're very lucky he did. Staley met with George Halas and explained the situation and made Halas a proposition he could not refuse. Staley said that big-time football needed big city crowds. So it was agreed that in October 21 that the Decatur Staleys would relocate to Chicago and play at Wrigley Field. It was called Cubs Park or Cubs Field. It wasn't called Wrigley Field till later on, but at this particular time in 1921, it was just either Cubs Field or Cubs Park. Oh wait, let me see. Yep, that's Shives Park. So does it say Cubs Park? See the Giants. This was 1926. Okay. The Bears and the it was called Cubs Park. So it wasn't called Wrigley Field until later on. So it wasn't Wrigley Field in actually, even 1926, it wasn't even Wrigley Field. But I'm talking about here. This is like in 1921. But anyway. They would retain a Staley name for one season. So basically what it was Staley, actually in some of the players, when he first started his team, he brought in a couple of really good players. And he said, would you like to play professional football? And I heard a video, and in particular, one of the players said something like, well, I think I should really go out and get myself a job. Because nowadays, if you play football, you don't need to work another job. Let's be for real. And some of these guys can make more in one season, and they could retire and never work another job ever again. Let's be for real, okay? But back then, money was tight. So one of these players went up to Mr. Staley, and Mr. Staley tried to bring one of these good players in to play for his team. Said, "Would you like to play football? And you make some money. To pay you." And one guy said, "Well, I think I just rather get a job, because steady income instead of just playing some football and then having to look for work and maybe playing some football and for work." Well, Mr. Staley said, well, no, you can play football for the team and you can work at the factory, right? So maybe they made some money playing football, but they also worked at the factory making money. So they had a secure job. So once the football season was over, they worked at the factory. Yeah, it was like a win-win. Unlike with the Giants, with Mr. Mara, right? They're playing football. Well, if after the football season's over, if you don't have a job, I guess you have to go look for a job, right? But A.E. Staley had it all. He had a field. They played a field there. Maybe they made some money playing football, but they had a job. So it was like a win-win. But A.E. Staley, very smart. Same thing with Mr. Halas too. Mr. Halas, very, very smart. But anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch, they would retain the Staley name for one season. So they moved to Chicago, retained the Staley name for one season. So basically, he would give himself. It was fantastic. He took the team, moved it to Chicago, bigger market, and he had advertising for one season. Okay. The 19 players on the roster would remain on the Staley payroll for the course of that first season, and Staley agreed to pay the team $5,000 bonus to help with the move to Chicago. So Mr. Staley came $5,000 to help the move, right? But they kept the Staley name, so he had advertising for 1 year. George Halas noted that Staley had no legal or moral obligation to promote the continuation of the football club, but Staley was a big man who understood big dreams, and he saw the big potential in the team he had created. Staley would later go go to the games up in Chicago when he could, and he referred to the now Chicago team as the Transplants. But at the end of the 21-22 football season, it was the time for the Staleys to change their names, given that they were well, they weren't sharing Wrigley Field. It was Cubs Park. But what it was sharing. They were sharing the field with the Cubs. They decided to call themselves the Bears, arguing that tongue-in-cheek that football players are larger in size than baseball players. So instead of being a Cub, they were a Bear. So in 1922, the Bears began their first official season, and the rest is history, as they say. But if you look here, okay, this one, let's see, I just want to, I mean, if this was, I got to find it here. Nope. It's here someplace. Well, I did have it somewhere. It showed, maybe it's back on this article here, but it showed how small the field was. All right. Well, I guess I had a bunch of things up. I guess maybe I cut out of it. But anyway, in one of the articles that I found, okay, the Staley, they had, as manufacturing, the Decatur Staleys, right, their field, all right, could only field 1,500. The stands was big enough for 1,500 people. Apparently, where there was enough room, I guess maybe around where another 1,000 people could stand. So at the very most, they could get 2,500 people in there, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I think all the tickets were $1. I think, if I remember correctly, seeing an article. But the thing was that anybody who worked at the factory got to see the game at half price. So that's 50 cents. Now, I know in 1925 and 26, the teams, the visiting teams were guaranteed a certain amount of money. All right. In this case here, in this game that I'm talking about, the December 5th, 1926 game, the Bears were, I'm gonna read from my good book here, right? I'll show you. The Bears were guaranteed $3,000 to show up. Okay, they didn't. I'm going to go over. They didn't want to get to 3,000, but you'll see what they wound up getting in just a bit here. But quite possibly it was the same thing maybe back in 1920, right? So now if you figure, say, if 2,500 people showed up, right? If say 2,000, I'm just saying 2,000 people paid $1, another 500 people only paid 50 cents, right? That's like $2,250 that they could have made maybe at the most, right? Well, you have to pay the visiting team a certain amount of money just to come, and you only made, maybe it made some money at the grandstand. I don't know, maybe selling stuff. But I mean, there wasn't a lot of money there. So therefore, they barely could make enough money to pay their players and the visiting team to come in. So Mr. Staley saw the bigger picture, the much bigger picture, right? And he's like, you got to go someplace where you can actually get enough people to show up and make some money. That's why a lot of times back then the Giants, like in 1925, 1926, a lot of their games were at home. Why? Well, because a lot of the visiting team that came in, they get a bigger crowd. You can put a huge crowd at the Polo Grounds compared to some of these other smaller parks. So a lot of teams tried to, they gave up, pretty much having home field advantage or anything like that. Just maybe to go to some place where there was maybe a bigger crowd, right? Bigger draw. But interesting. This game here, the 5th. Okay, now 1926, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets and the Chicago Bears were 1-2, whichever way, right? 1-2, uno dos, right? They were the best two teams in football. Now, just to go to show you how crazy it was back in the days, the Wild West, right, of the 20s. The Bears played the day before. They played the Frankfurt Jelly. They played the best team in football the day before, on the 4th. Took a train to New York City to play the Giants on the 5th. That's the way it was back then. What it was in Philadelphia, right, where the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets played. They had the Blue Laws, you couldn't play on Sunday, or as they called it back then, the day of the Sabbath. Couldn't play on Sunday. Couldn't do it. You could play baseball, sure. Can't play football though. Go figure. Anyway, so what a lot of teams did, especially back in 1925, a lot of teams played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on Saturday. Then they took like a train, I guess it was, to Pottsville, about 100 miles away, and they would play the Pottsville Maroons on Sunday. So a lot of teams did that quite often. A lot of time, as I said, anytime the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets played a home game, it was always on a Saturday. And a lot of times those teams that played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets on Saturday would find a team to play on Sunday that was close proximity to Philadelphia. So what wound up happening was and I'm going to go over this game, so we're going to go over both games. We got a twofer here, right? Well, actually not a twofer, because the one game I'm going to go over never even played. But anyway, they scheduled the game for Saturday in Frankfurt. And at the time, Frankfurt was the second best team. The Bears were the best team going into into December 4th. Now, December 4th, all right, the Bears, as I said, they played in Frankfurt against the Yellow Jackets on Saturday, December 4th. So then they took the train December 5th, and they came up to a very snowy New York City. But the Chicago Bears were 11-0-2 going into the December 4th game against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Do I get them up there? I guess I don't. All right, so but the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets going into their game against the Bears were 12-1-1. Now, what wound up happening was the Frankfurt. I'll go over the game. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets won. So basically, after the game was over, both teams had one loss. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets had a loss. Chicago Bears had a loss. But when the season was over with, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets would wind up winning the championship because they had wound up with more wins. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets were 14-19. There we go. That's the Giants. Oh, there we go. 14-1-2. The Bears were 12-1-3. Now, the ties did not count. So the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, who were 14-1-2, basically were 14-1. The Chicago Bears, who were 12-1-3, were basically 12-1. So the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets were 14-1. Their winning percentage was .933. The Bears, who finished 12-1, their winning percentage was .923. Therefore, giving the championship to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Now, the Giants were a good team in 1927. They were 8-4-1. Okay, Giants lost two tough games. Do I have this on there? Frankfurt. Yeah. Oh, here you go. 1926. 1926. The Giants lost. They lost to the Los Angeles Buccaneers by a point, but they lost. Then the Giants also lost to the Chicago Bears. So they played. They wanted to play the Chicago Bears earlier in the season instead of late, like they did in 1925. 1925, they played them in Chicago in December. Here they played them in Chicago in October. Right. So the Giants lost 2 games 6-0 to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. They lost 1 game in Chicago to the Bears 7-0. So the Giants lost 3 of the 4 games to the top 2 clubs. right? They also lost another game to the Los Angeles Buccaneers, 6-0. Buccaneers, they were a good team. They were a traveling team, but they were a good team. Anyway, so the Giants were a decent team in 1926. They said they finished 8-4-1. They had 4 losses, but 3 of those 4 losses were to the top 2 teams by 1 score. They didn't get blown out in any of the games. But the Bears played a game December 4th. Took a train and they came and they played December. They're supposed to play December 5th again. So they would have been a tired club, right? Playing one game the day before and coming to play the Giants the next day. The Giants were fresh. The Giants had a whole week off. They played the Sunday before against the Brooklyn Lions or the Brooklyn Lions or the Brooklyn Horsemen. They were called like 37 different names back then. But so the Giants had a whole week off. They were fresh. So the Giants quite possibly could have beaten the Bears if they had played the game. But due to the snow, right, the game was not played. But as I said, going into the game, the December 4th game, the Chicago Bears were undefeated. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets had 1 loss. So if the Bears won or tied, they still would have had no losses. Basically, the Chicago Bears lost the championship, 1926 championship, because they missed an extra point. They lost 7-6. They missed an extra point. They were up 6-0. They scored a touchdown. I'm going to go over it. Scored a touchdown on a long run, 62-yard run. Guy missed the extra point. They were up 6-0. It is all the scoring in this game happened in the 4th quarter. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets got the ball, marched down the field, scored on a pass. They kicked the extra point. They went up 7-6. So if the Bears kicked the extra point, they would have tied the game 7-7. The Bears would have had no losses. They would have been undefeated. They would have won the championship. But because they missed the extra point, no championship for you, right? So let me go over this here real fast. This is from the I'm going to find it from the Philadelphia Inquirer. All right. Let's see here. It says Frankfurt tops Bears in thrilling fray. All right. Hammer kicks goal from placement for point after this tally, and Jackets are triumphant in thrilling fray. Hammer is from the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Sen, who is the running back for the Bears who scored the touchdown, former Knox College star, races 61 yards for sole counter that comes to Driscoll and his Bruins. All right, let's see here. Oops, let me zoom in on this here. So this is the game that was played the day before. The undefeated Bears went in to play the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And once I'm done reading this, I'll go right into the Bears Giants non-game, shall we say, right? Blazing over the ebbing, dying minutes of a thrilling battle. Now, keep in mind, I said the first 3 quarters there was no scoring. It was nothing going into the 4th quarter of this game. And this game here decided the whole championship for the 1926 season. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets yesterday snatched victory from defeat when they conquered the Chicago Bears before 15,000 shivering supporters at Shibe Park 7-6. It was in the final quarter that the great offensive of both teams burst through the adamant defense of the rivals and packed 15 minutes with such drama, thrills, and wonder plays that the spectators warmed in the heat of their own emotions. Ooh, I love the way they word this stuff. Coming from behind, like some great escadrille, the Jackets swept through the air to wing their way to victory, a triumph that sent them in the van of the in the van of the Bruins, whatever the heck that means, and may be the salvation of the Chamberlain clan when final honors and essential crown are awarded. Whatever. Whatever that winds up meaning. No idea. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Okay. All right. Because they got this article. It's on like 2 different pages here. Okay, here we go. The Yellow Jackets punted the ball. It was grounded on the Bears' 39-yard line. The Bears had this is toward the end of the middle of the fourth quarter or so. All right. The Bears had used a splendid formation, which swung 7 men on one side of the line. 7. Okay. With a back directly behind the center and the running back 5 yards behind the wing back. The ball was passed to Sen on this formation, and away he started like a hound freed from the leash. I love the way they put this stuff. This is unbelievable. The interference that sprang into action for him was wondrous. Sen gets away. A wall of humanity strode in front of this speedster with the oval under his arm, meaning the football. And the first man knocked out was Crowthers, the end. Another interferer picked off Tech's hammer. A third put 2 bits out of play. Now, 2 bits would be very important. So two bits was a guy's nickname for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, but 2 bits would come back, get his revenge. And then Sen straight-armed another. By this time, the whippet from Illinois was free, and he was going like a limited, whatever the heck that means. The left side of the Frankfurt line by this time had swung into pursuit, and Chamberlain was pulling down the terrain between himself and Sen. But the time was too short and the distance too great for the Jacket manager to turn the trick. Sen went over the line just 2 yards ahead of his pursuer, meaning he scored a touchdown with, I guess, Chamberlain 2 yards behind him. Driscoll then failed the goal, and a vast stillness fell upon the cohorts of the Jackets. But this Paul, P-A-L-L, Paul, lifted immediately. Frankfurt realized that but 2 minutes were left. I'll tell you what, the ending of this game was very exciting, especially if you consider it was for the championship. Wound up being for the championship. There were 2 minutes left, and discretion must be tossed to the winds and the pigskins to the backs. Stockton, easily the best forward passer in football this season, was assigned that task. So I guess Stockton was the guy who was going to throw the football for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. He wafted one in those flat baseball passes to Bruder, and 5 yards were gained. Stabbing the line once yielded, 3 more. Let's see here. Hold on. Stockton. Did I say? Oh, yeah. What did I say? Stockton. Okay, yeah. Stockton was basically is the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets fullback. So he was the one throwing the ball. But anyway. And then the ball was now worked well within the Bruins' territory. Time was ebbing away fast, and it was up to Stockton to make the dramatic play of the game. Never was such a roll in better hands. Barking the signal for a pass, he took the ball in direct shot from center as the linemen of the Bears came thundering through. It seemed as if Stockton must be borne to the grass by this avalanche, but he kept retreating until he was at least 15 yards from the scrimmage line. As these burleys kept pressing closer, groan welled up from all of Frankfurt. Then, as one man made a dive for him, Stockton raised his arm as nonchalantly as it lighting a cigarette, and he pegged the ball. He pegged that ball. I guess that means he threw the ball. Pegged is the word. It was a throw that would have delighted Jimmy Dykes, who maintained maintains his vigil about where Stockton was standing. The ball arched through the air, and it looked like a punt. It had been thrown so high. It was the perfect long pass, too high for the Bears to reach and bat it down, but fast enough to come hurtling through the ozone to the midget Homan, Homan, who was the okay. So the fullback Stockton threw the ball to Homan, who's basically listed as the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets quarterback. So the fullback, basically, just because you're a quarterback does not mean you're the one that got, you're not Tom Brady directing it. You know what I mean? Other guys threw passes too. Then 2 Bits became the $1 million. 2 Bits Homan, right? Homan had gone almost to the end zone, at least not more than 2 yards this side of the final chalk mark. Homan turns the trick. He kept his arms ready and his eyes skinned, and gracefully the ball descended into the grasp of the Lebanon Valley player. 2 defensive backs of the Bears had careened down behind the goal line after they had speed the bold 2 Bits stationed there as if he were a cop on a fixed post. But ere they could knock down the ball or smear Homans after he grabbed the oval, not the ball, the oval. 2 Bits had engulfed the pigskin, slid a step or two to his left, and put the ball down on the grass, and the stands went into a delirium. Hammer then accomplished his end of the bargain by booting the point. So that was huge. But while Frankfurt kept hoping that the game would end, those travelers from Michigan, from Bowl, I have no idea what that is. Boulmich, Bowl, were far from through. Done was no word found in the bright lexicon of their youth and professional struggles. They went right into the air, too, and it began to look dubious. The first pass, a short one from Patty Driscoll to Sen, only gained 4 yards, but the next one almost brought Frankfurt to the verge of apoplexy. It was Driscoll's purpose to pass to Sen, hoping that the boy could shake himself loose and gallop for the winning touchdown. And Driscoll almost did that very little thing. He looped a beautiful pass that Sen grabbed out of the air, straight-armed the man who covered him, and then was free. Oh, my goodness. Like the hoofbeats of 100 horses came the cleated thumps of the pursuers on that chilled soil, but it looked like a stern chase and a hopeless one for Frankfurt. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But the treacherous footing came to the rescue of the Quaker Warriors. Treacherous footing, for as an end almost reached Sen, the Knox College boy tried to evade him and slipped. He fell, and this time there were 3 or 4 frantic Yellow Jackets, pinned him right on the ground. Then the tumultuous defense of the Hornets held Driscoll and his allies at bay. Field goal fails. 3 tries at the line had thrown back the Bruins to the 40-yard line, and desperate measures were necessary, and right away. The Bears huddled so long that the referee penalized them 5 yards and cautioned them to hustle. So Driscoll went back 5 more yards and tried a field goal from midfield, backed by a stout wind blowing across the field. Driscoll's boot only carried to the 5-yard line, however, and before the teams could line up for another play, the whistle blew and the game was over. The Bears thus suffered their first defeat of the season, and the Hornets had stung to death the jinx that always pursued them when encountering the Chicagoans. Now, so he booted to the 5-yard line. Now, they were also penalized for huddling and taking so long. I don't know why on earth they would, unless they were trying to figure out what the heck to do in that game. In that situation, I guess but they huddled too long, were penalized 5 yards, and he kicked it from midfield. It went to the 5-yard line. So he almost kicked a 50-yard field goal, right, which would have actually wound up winning the game. But maybe if the game was a little bit longer, maybe the Bears would have wound up winning. But that was the only loss for the Bears all season. They finished at 12-1. Frankfurt Yellow Jackets finished at 14-1. So the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets would wind up becoming the 1926 NFL champion, basically on that game. Basically, I mean, for the 2 reasons. I mean, the Bears missed the field goal at the end of the game. They also missed the extra point. Missed extra point wound up costing the Chicago Bears the 1926 title. Because if they had tied that game, they wouldn't have had any losses and they would have won. Right? But anyway, let's go on here. I got a couple articles here to read to just kind of show you what was going on with the in the New York area. Well, actually, New York and area. A 7-inch snow covers the city as storm hits the east. 10,000 toil to clean drifts. Heavy snow fall upstate. New England suffers as mercury hovers at 0 level. So it was a nasty storm. 2 dead and 2 hurt here. Another fatality laid to storm as woman perishes in smoke. Trains are delayed. Surface traffic impeded. Autos stalled and trolleys are held up. Shovelers work all night at open streets. The heaviest early December snowfall in 40 years, part of a storm general in the east and stretching out over Ohio, laid a blanket on the city 7 inches deep yesterday and brought death to 2 persons and injuring the 2 other people. Lodging houses were filled to overflowing and traffic was seriously impeded. At 10 o'clock last night, the Weather Bureau reported that 7 inches had fallen, surpassing that record of 6.5 inches on December 5th, 1911. But still 2 inches short of the record set on December 5th, 1886, when 8 inches fell and continued snow for the 2 succeeding days piled up a total of 13 inches. Last night's snow, which had subsided during the evening to a light swirling powder, ceased almost completely before 10 o'clock, and no recurrence of it was expected during the night or today. At 10 o'clock, the temperature had fallen from its high point of 27 above zero at 5 o'clock yesterday to 19 degrees at 11 o'clock. Unofficial temperatures were higher, and at 2 a.m., the sidewalk temperatures in Times Square were 23, but still, it was very cold. Let's see here. The storm was of far greater severity in northern New York. In Buffalo, of course, the snow was from 7 to 12 inches deep, and in downtown corners, it was swept by the wind into 7-foot drifts. 3 deaths due to storm was recorded in and around Buffalo. The temperature at Syracuse was dropping towards 0 last night, with a gale raging, and even as close as New York City as Westchester County, there was a fall of 7.5 inches with a temperature of 8 degrees above 0. Transportation companies were exerting every effort to prevent a blockage of traffic in the White Plains, New Rochelle, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, Port Jefferson, and other localities. One of the counties reported a 15-inch snowfall with 30-mile-an-hour winds. So, and then even in Boston, it was pretty bad too. Boston had its coldest December 5th. Okay. Even severe weather was reported at Boston, where the mercury was hovering around 0 on the coldest December 5th in the history of the weather station there. Even Philadelphia, too, was having its struggle with the storm, with temperatures and snowfall comparable to those here. Traffic was being maintained, like in New Jersey and all of that. So apparently, I guess the game, the game that the Bears wound up playing, I guess they lucked out because they played the day before, on the 4th, before the weather came in Philadelphia, because Philadelphia got some snow as well too. So it says pro teams were forced to call off games. Snowstorm prevents Giant Chicago Bears and Duluth Eskimos and Horsemen clashes, the Brooklyn Horsemen. Right, so there was obviously, the game was supposed to be played in the Polo Grounds, and the game was supposed to be played in Brooklyn was canceled as well, too. The New York Giants and the Chicago Bears put on their moleskins at the Polo Grounds yesterday, wallowed around in the 3 inches of snow that covered the field, and decided it was no day for a football game. As the New York fans, with the exception of 100 brave-hearted souls, included 2 photographers and a dozen of New York's finest, had decided similarly, the game between the two was called off. The mere fact that it was snowing and cold did not discourage the 22 Huskies who went out for a test workout, but not even polar bears could have played football yesterday, with the chalk stripes buried thicker every minute under the fleecing drifts, which made navigation impossible. So managers Tim Mara and Hallis called their teams back into the dressing rooms. The game will not be played, as the Bears are scheduled to play in Chicago next Sunday against Pottsville, and have another game, as I mentioned, on the 19th, okay, against the Green Bay Packers. Now, if they had played another game, it would have been the 26th, and that quite possibly, because the schedule, they were allowed to play into December, obviously, but the schedule, you're only allowed to play so far into and actually have the games count. So the game just was not going to be made up. So it was what it is. The Giants have finished their schedule, but next Sunday at the Polo Grounds, they will play, and it's going to be my next video, they will play the Philadelphia Quakers, champions of the American League. The Brooklyn Horsemen were scheduled to play Ernie Nevers and the Duluth Eskimos in the final game of their season at Ebbets Field yesterday, but the weather did not permit the playing of the game. So let's see. I got a couple more here. This is from the Yonkers Statesman. Snow forces postponement of New York's Pro Grid games. New York Giants and the Chicago Bears put on their moleskins. Basically, it's almost the same thing as said in the other one. The mere fact, it's all the same thing. Yeah, okay, it's the same thing. Yeah, okay, it's the same thing. Let me see. I do have another one here. Well, let me see. Maybe this one's a little bit different here. Let's see. Snow halts pro football game. Let me see if this is any different, or if it says the same thing. New York Football Giants and Patty Driscoll's Chicago Bears came very near to playing the football game, which was scheduled at the Polo Grounds yesterday afternoon. There was not a single person in the stands. A blizzard was swooping down over Coogan's Bluff. The field was hidden under a deep blanket of snow, and the only distinctive part of it was the goalposts, but they were very nearly covered. This article is ripped right here, and it's hard. Something in private set back a different opinion. I don't know. It seemed that the Bears had a $3,000 guarantee, which I'm going to go over in this book. All right. They guarantee, basically, if another team shows up, if I guess if they call or whatever and tell them or notify them, whatever, not to come, I guess that's one thing. But if the team comes, there's a guarantee of money, once again, which I'm going to go over in this book. Right. But there was nothing about snow in it. So when Tim Mara, president of the Giants, saw the conditions of the weather and the total absence of customers, he went to the Bears and said, well, how much do you want? It was tactically understood that there was no sense in playing football to 60,000 empty seats on a field where one could not even see the gridiron, the yard lines, or the boundary lines. The Bears said they were $3,000. That's what they were supposed to be guaranteed. Mara said, what? Mara said, $3,000 for just coming up here and getting warm in the dressing room? If you want $3,000, you have to play for it. And he went out and slammed the door, crossed to the Giants dressing room and told the boys to get dressed, that the game was on. So the Giants began pulling on a dozen shirts apiece, and the Bears over in their quarters were doing likewise. Meantime, emissaries were trotting to and fro negotiating. The Giants clumped out of the clubhouse and took the field greased, bandaged, and enlarged by extra clothing. The Bears were ready and had just excluded visitors from their locker room to go into conference when the door opened an inch or two and the voice called out, $2,000. What do you say? The Bears, okay, the Bears said, and promptly forgot about the conference. So the Giants came in and out of the blizzard and took off their football tags. The Bears got back into their street clothes, and the game was off. It was the last National League game of the year for the Giants schedule. Next week, the Giants are scheduled to play an interleague game. Basically, it was, if you want to look at it like this, right? It was an interleague game. The Philadelphia Quakers were the champions of the first AFL. The Giants weren't the champions, but they were the NFL. So that was going to be like the first clash, I do believe, ever. The NFL and the AFL, right? Happened in 1926. The Giants were going to open up a can of whoop butt on them and beat them 31-0. So that'll be more in my video next week. But I just wanted to read this here, and it goes a little, not too much. It pretty much kind of shows you or talks about what just happened basically in that last article there. Okay. Let's see. Only one. This is from the Giants of New York. What's his name? Barry Gridiron. So it's an old book. Actually, it had a dust cover on it. It had a picture and all that, but it ripped. I got it downstairs. I didn't want to throw it out. But this book basically covers the Giants from 1925, and it goes up to 1962. It doesn't cover their 1963 season or whatever. So it goes from 25 to 62. So it does a pretty good job. Pretty much it goes almost like every year. Almost, some of the page maybe combines a year or so here, but pretty much goes over whatever. That's almost the first, almost 40 years of the Giants football. So it does like it has some good insight on it. All right. So only one league game remained on the schedule against the Chicago Bears in the Polo Grounds, and the Giants were 8-4-1. Still had a chance to knock the visitors 11-1-2 on the season out of the championship. Basically, if the Giants could have beaten the Bears and it gave the Bears a second loss, that really would have hurt their chances. If Mara thought the weather had been bad earlier in the season, he was in for a surprise. By game time, the temperature was 18 degrees. The wind was blowing 25 miles an hour, and 2-foot snowbanks covered the entire field. It was not a day for football, and except for a few photographers and reporters and members of the Mara family, the stands were deserted. Only one official had been able to reach the ballpark. Wow. And March and Alexander had talked a policeman into filling in. So I guess Dr. Harry March and Doc Alexander, the Giants coach for the 1926 season, I guess, talked to a policeman and he was going to fill in for maybe being one of the refs, I guess. Let's see. While Nesser dove headfirst into a snowbank and Haynes and Bomar started a snowball fight, Mara crossed over from the Giants' dressing room to tell the Bears the field was in unplayable condition. Hallis, who was with the rest of his players, was still dressed in street clothes, listened while Mara talked, and then nodded his head. And Hallis said, "Well, that's fine with us." He said, "But where's our $3,000 guarantee?" And Mara said, "What guarantee?" shouted Mara. "There aren't a dozen paying customers in the house." And then Hallis said, "That's your problem, Tim," said Hallis. "We've got a $3,000 guarantee, rain or shine, and we're not leaving without it." And Mara said, okay, if that's the way you want it, said Mara, you boys better get into your uniforms. If you think you're going to get that $3,000, you're going to have to play that game, even if there are only 2 people in the stands, which there basically was, about 2 people in the stands. Mara slammed the door and stormed out. The Bears cursed, grumbled, started undressing, and cursed some more. 10 minutes later, someone opened the Bear. This is what it said in that other article. Someone opened the Bear dressing room door at just a couple inches, and without coming into the view said, how about $2,000? Halas looked at his players who wanted to play even less than Mara and answered, we'll take the 2. The NFL season was over, but Mara still wanted a parting shot at the American Football League, and that's when they were going to want to play in the Philadelphia Quakers. So I mean, so the Bears, they were tired. You know, they were very tired. They had just played the day before, right? They took a train down, and they came here, and they have to play in a snowstorm, right? You know, and they were in no shape to play. The Giants quite possibly would have beaten them. You know, the one thing here was that the Bears basically finished 12-1. The Yellow Jackets were 14-1. So the Bears were a couple wins from tying the Yellow Jackets. So this game would have if they went up playing as and if the Bears would have won, the Bears would have been 13-1. It would have been only 1 game short. But it is what it is. That's just the way it was back then. You know. I said, but interestingly enough, I said the day before was the game that decided the whole 1926 season. The Bears scored a touchdown, went up 6-0, missed the extra point, and with basically almost time running out, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets threw a pass, completed a pass, kicked the extra point, wound up winning 7-6, giving the Bears their only loss of the season. So when the 1926 season was over, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets were 14-1 with a .933 winning percentage. The Bears were 12-1 with a .923 winning percentage. And with a winning percentage of .933, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets wound up winning the 1926 NFL season because they had the better winning percentage. It wasn't, there's no playoffs and all like that. The team with the best winning percentage, and that was the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, 1926. So this game here, the December 5th, 1926 game between the Giants and Bears was not played. It was a snowstorm came through, and this concluded the Giants' season. But I said they would play one more game the following week against the AFL champion Philadelphia Quakers, which would quite possibly be the first ever AFL NFL contest. So that's pretty much happened on this day, December 5th, 1926, in New York Football Giants history. I'll see you next time.